My name is Helene, and I'm 63 years old. I never thought my daughter's husband would betray me so cruelly at a Chicago train station, abandoning me without a phone wallet or way home. What Derek didn't know was that beneath my modest lifestyle, I had $37 million hidden away. For years, I watched him manipulate my daughter Sophia, but that day at the station was the final straw. Before I tell you what happened that cold November day, let me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear how I taught my smug son-in-law the lesson of a lifetime. 15 years ago, I lost my husband Frank to a sudden heart attack. We'd been married for 28 wonderful years, raising our daughter Sophia in a comfortable suburban home outside of Boston. Frank was the love of my life, a kind and generous man who worked as an engineering professor at the local university. His death left a hole in my heart that never fully healed. But I had to stay strong for Sophia, who was devastated by losing her father. What few people knew, including my own daughter, was that I had built a substantial fortune throughout my career as an accountant. I specialized in financial management for high net worth clients, learning the ins and outs of investment strategies from some of the sharpest minds in finance. While I advised others on their millions, I quietly applied those same principles to my own modest savings. Over decades, I made shrewd investments in real estate, early-stage tech companies, and diverse market portfolios. I lived well below my means, driving the same reliable sedan for 12 years and keeping our family home modest but comfortable. Frank knew about some of my investments, but even he wasn't aware of the full extent of our wealth. It wasn't that I deliberately hid it from him. We simply had an arrangement where I managed our finances and he trusted my judgment completely. By the time Frank passed away, I had accumulated nearly $20 million. In the years that followed, careful management and continued investment grew that sum to $37 million, all carefully distributed across various accounts and investments. I kept this information private, not out of shame or secrecy, but because I'd seen firsthand how sudden wealth could change people and attract the wrong kind of attention. Sophia inherited her father's intelligence and compassion. After graduating with honors in psychology, she became a counselor at a community mental health center. I was incredibly proud of her choice to help others, rather than pursue a more lucrative career path. She had a small inheritance from Frank's life insurance policy, which I encouraged her to save for the future. 3 years ago, when Sophia was 32, she met Derek at her workplace. He was a new administrative director who had transferred from another facility in Seattle. Tall, with carefully styled dark hair and a ready smile, Derek charmed everyone he met, especially my daughter. When Sophia first brought him home for dinner, I was impressed by his attentive manner and the way he seemed genuinely interested in her work. "Mom, isn't Derek amazing?" Sophia asked me after that first dinner, her eyes shining with excitement. "He's so different from anyone I've dated before." I nodded, genuinely pleased to see my daughter so happy. "He seems very nice, sweetheart. I'm glad you found someone who appreciates how special you are." Their romance progressed quickly. Derek took Sophia to upscale restaurants, bought her thoughtful gifts, and within 3 months had keys to her apartment. 8 months after they met, Derek proposed during a weekend trip to Nantucket, presenting her with a diamond ring that seemed unusually extravagant for someone on a non-profit administrator's salary. "We don't need a long engagement," he told me when they announced their plans. "When you know, right, Helene?" The wedding was a small but elegant affair. Derek insisted on handling most of the arrangements, which I found unusual, but attributed to his desire to make things special for Sophia. It wasn't until after they returned from their honeymoon in Bali that I began noticing subtle changes in my daughter. She called less frequently. When we did speak, Derek often hovered nearby, sometimes taking the phone to chat before Sophia could finish our conversation. Invitations to family dinners became meetings at restaurants where Derek controlled the narrative and timing of our interactions. Little red flags began appearing. Once, while Sophia was in the bathroom at a restaurant, Derek leaned across the table, his voice dropping. So, Helene Sophia mentioned her father left her some money. Is there more coming her way eventually? His tone was casual, but his eyes were calculating. Frank's life insurance provided a modest sum, I replied carefully. We've never been a wealthy family, Derek. His smile dimmed slightly. That's too bad. With the housing market the way it is, every little bit helps, right? That conversation troubled me, but I convinced myself I was being overprotective. However, more disturbing patterns emerged. Sophia gradually lost touch with several close friends. When I asked about her friend Rachel, whom she'd known since college, Sophia sighed. Derek thinks she's a negative influence. He says she's jealous of our relationship and trying to cause problems. I don't know, maybe he's right. I couldn't help but notice how Sophia now rarely made decisions without checking with Derek first. Her once confident demeanor had become hesitant, her vibrant personality muted. Despite my growing concerns, I kept them to myself, fearing that voicing them would only push my daughter further away. I didn't want to force her to choose between us, especially when I suspected Derek would ensure I wouldn't win that contest. Meanwhile, I continued managing my investments discreetly, living in the same modest 3-bedroom house I'd shared with Frank, driving my reliable but unimpressive car, and dressing in comfortable, unstylish clothes that gave no hint of my financial status. This wasn't an act. I simply had no interest in flaunting wealth or impressing others. My simple lifestyle had become a comfortable habit, one that would ultimately prove to be my best protection. The first real disappointment came about 6 months after Sophia and Derek's wedding. I'd invited them over for Sunday dinner, something we used to do weekly before Derek came into the picture. Now these gatherings had become monthly at best. I prepared all of Sophia's favorites, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, homemade rolls, and apple pie for dessert. As we ate, the conversation turned to retirement planning, as Derek mentioned a colleague who was struggling financially after retiring. It's so important to have professional management of retirement funds, I said, drawing on my decades of experience as an accountant. Many people don't realize how critical it is to diversify investments and plan for healthcare costs. Derek set down his fork with a slight clang against the plate. With all due respect, Helene financial planning has changed dramatically in recent years. The strategies that worked in your day are practically obsolete now. The dismissive tone in his voice was unmistakable. I glanced at Sophia, expecting her to jump to my defense, but she was studying her plate intently. Actually, the fundamentals of sound financial planning haven't changed that much, I replied mildly. Though there are certainly new investment vehicles available. Derek chuckled as though I'd said something naive. That's exactly what I mean. The digital economy, cryptocurrency, algorithmic trading. These have completely transformed the landscape. No offense, but it's hard for your generation to keep up. I had several clients with substantial cryptocurrency portfolios and had recently advised on algorithmic trading strategies, but I saw no benefit in pointing this out. Instead, I changed the subject, asking about their plans to renovate their bathroom. Later, as I was clearing the dishes while Sophia was in the bathroom, Derek followed me into the kitchen. His voice was low concerned, but there was something performative about it, as though he was rehearsing lines for a play. Helene, I've been meaning to talk to you about something delicate, he said, leaning against my counter. I've noticed you making some concerning financial decisions lately. I paused, genuinely confused. What do you mean? The unnecessary grocery splurges, that expensive new coat you bought last month? Sophia mentioned you complained about property taxes being high. I'm worried you're not managing your money well. The coat he referred to was a $49 clearance item from a department store. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, but my finances are quite in order. Derek placed a hand on my shoulder. Elderly people often struggle with financial decisions as they age. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Sophia and I have discussed it, and we think it might be best if we helped manage your finances going forward. The condescension in his tone was infuriating, but more upsetting was the revelation that he and Sophia had been discussing me as though I were an incompetent child. Before I could respond, Derek returned to the dining room as Sophia came downstairs. That evening, after they left, I sat in my quiet house, deeply troubled. I'd planned to tell Sophia about my financial situation after she'd settled into married life, thinking she and her new husband might appreciate help with a house down payment, or perhaps starting a family. Now I knew I couldn't reveal anything about my wealth with Derek in the picture. The next shock came a week later when I stopped by their house unexpectedly with some gardening catalogs for Sophia. They weren't expecting me, and as I approached the front door, I heard raised voices through the partially open window. "Your mother is becoming a financial burden, Sophia," Derek was saying. "You saw how she lives, wasteful, spending no real savings from what I can tell. What happens when she can't work anymore or needs care, that's going to fall on us." "She's only 63, Derek, and she's always been good with money," my daughter replied, her voice uncertain. "You're too close to see it objectively. Trust me, I deal with institutional finances every day. I can spot mismanagement a mile away. We need to start planning now before she drains what little she has." There was a long pause before Sophia spoke again. "What do you think we should do?" "For starters, we should get power of attorney, just as a precaution." I backed away from the door, not wanting to hear more. Driving home, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: hurt that my daughter would even consider such a thing, anger at Derek's manipulations, and a growing sense of unease about what he might be planning. In the weeks that followed, I noticed Sophia becoming increasingly distant. She declined lunch invitations, claiming work was too busy. When we did speak on the phone, our conversations were superficial and brief. I tried reaching out to some of her friends, only to discover she'd lost touch with most of them since her marriage. The final blow in this initial phase of disappointment came on my birthday. Sophia had promised to take me to dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant. I spent extra time getting ready, looking forward to some quality time with my daughter. An hour before she was supposed to pick me up, my phone rang. "Mom, I'm so sorry," Sophia began, her voice strained. "Derek has a work emergency. We can't make dinner tonight." "Can you come alone?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I haven't seen you in weeks." "I really can't. Derek took our car to work, and the emergency might need both of us. Can we reschedule for next week?" I agreed, of course, but the next day I saw photos on Sophia's social media of Derek at a golf course with business associates posted at exactly the time of his supposed work emergency. The caption read, "Great networking opportunity with the team from Regional Healthcare." It wasn't the missed dinner that broke my heart. It was the casual lie and the realization that my daughter was either complicit or worse, completely under his control. That night, I made a decision I would watch and wait, documenting every inconsistency and manipulation while protecting my assets and myself. If Derek was the man I now suspected him to be, evidence would accumulate, and I needed to be prepared. The situation deteriorated rapidly over the next few months. Derek began suggesting it was time for me to downsize, insisting that maintaining my family home was too much for a woman my age. What began as casual comments evolved into orchestrated pressure. "Mom, Derek found this lovely apartment complex for seniors," Sophia told me during one of our increasingly rare visits. "It has activities, meals included, and you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance anymore." "I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my home," I replied, noting how Sophia wouldn't meet my eyes. "And I'm hardly ready for a retirement community." Derek jumped in smoothly. "It's not about capability, Helene. It's about practicality. This house has so much unused space, and the market is excellent right now. You could make a significant profit, invest the proceeds, and live more comfortably. The proceeds would certainly help with your retirement," Sophia added, clearly reciting a line Derek had fed her. "We worry about you stretching your pension too thin." I almost laughed at the irony. My pension was a small monthly payment I took from one of my smaller investment accounts, deliberately modest, to maintain my cover story. But I could see this was a coordinated effort with Derek as the puppet master and my daughter as his unwitting proxy. Eventually, after weeks of pressure, I reluctantly agreed to sell my home. Not because I believed their arguments, but because I could see that refusing would only create more conflict with Sophia, potentially cutting me off from her completely. I needed to stay close enough to protect her when the time came. The house sold quickly, as Derek had predicted. What he hadn't predicted was my insistence on handling the transaction myself, using a real estate attorney I'd known for years. Still, when the sale closed, Derek was right there offering to help me manage the proceeds. "We found a perfect financial advisor," he said smoothly. "He specializes in helping people in your situation." "That's very thoughtful," I replied, "but I've already deposited the money in my account and made arrangements." This was true, though the account was just one of many, a relatively small one I used for daily expenses. Derek's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Helene, no offense, but making financial decisions hastily at your age can be risky. Sophia and I feel responsible for ensuring your future security." "I appreciate your concern," I said, matching his condescending tone. "But I've managed my finances successfully for decades." That evening, Sophia called, clearly upset. "Mom, why won't you let us help you? Derek knows what he's doing with investments. He just wants what's best for you." "Sweetheart, I know you believe that, but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." "You're being stubborn," she said, her voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before. "Derek says this is exactly how it started with his grandmother, before they discovered she'd given thousands to phone scammers." This comparison to a cognitively impaired elderly person was the final straw, but I kept my composure. "Sophia, I'm not being scammed, and my mind is perfectly clear. I simply prefer to maintain my independence." "Fine," she said shortly, "but don't complain to me when problems arise." I moved into a small but comfortable apartment, deliberately choosing one that reinforced the image of someone with limited means. Derek and Sophia kept most of the proceeds from my house sale, around $380,000, which I allowed to happen as part of my longer strategy. The amount was insignificant compared to my hidden assets, and it gave Derek exactly what he wanted, or so he thought. As weeks passed, Derek's behavior toward me when Sophia wasn't present became increasingly hostile. Gone was the veneer of concern, replaced by barely concealed contempt. "You know, Helene," he said during one visit while Sophia was on a work call in another room, "you really should be grateful for everything we're doing for you. Most elderly parents become burdens on their children, but we're actually trying to help you maintain some dignity." I simply smiled, which seemed to infuriate him more. His face flushed slightly as he leaned in, voice lowered. "Let's be clear about something. If it ever comes down to a choice between you and me, Sophia will choose me every time. I've made sure of that." It took every ounce of self-control not to respond to this naked threat. Instead, I changed the subject when Sophia returned, acting as though nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Sophia was changing in concerning ways. The confident, compassionate woman I'd raised was becoming anxious and withdrawn. She lost weight, developed dark circles under her eyes, and jumped at sudden movements. When I gently asked if everything was all right, she would paste on a bright smile that never reached her eyes. "Everything's great, Mom. Work is just stressful right now." But I knew the signs of emotional manipulation. As a financial advisor, I'd seen too many clients trapped in controlling relationships, watching their confidence and independence systematically dismantled by partners who isolated them from support systems and undermined their self-worth. My suspicions about Derek deepened when I received a call from Barbara, a former client who had moved to Seattle years earlier. "Helene, this might sound strange, but did your daughter marry a man named Derek Winters? About 40, dark hair, very charming, works in healthcare administration." My heart sank. "Yes, that's him." "Why?" Barbara's voice became grave. "Because if it's the same man he was briefly engaged to my niece Lisa 2 years ago, he systematically isolated her from friends and family, tried to gain control of her trust fund, and when she finally stood up to him, he cleaned out their joint account and disappeared." This confirmation of my worst fears spurred me to action. I hired Jack, a private investigator who specialized in financial fraud. Within 2 weeks, he uncovered damning information. Derek had done this before, twice. Each time he targeted women with vulnerable family members, particularly aging parents with assets. He would charm his way into the family, gradually isolate his partner from their support network, gain control of family finances, and then disappear with as much money as he could access. Even more disturbing, Jack discovered Derek had significant gambling debts and was being pressured by creditors. Bank records showed large withdrawals from accounts he shared with Sophia, money that wasn't being spent on their household. "Mrs. Harrison," Jack told me during our meeting in a quiet coffee shop far from my apartment, "based on the pattern and the current financial activities, I believe your son-in-law is accelerating his timeline. He's already accessed much of your daughter's inheritance from her father and is moving money into accounts only he controls." I nodded, feeling a cold determination replace my anxiety. "What's the next step in his playbook based on previous cases?" Jack looked grim. "Typically, once he's extracted as much as he can, he manufactures a crisis that gives him access to any remaining assets, then disappears. In the previous cases, he created situations where the victims were too embarrassed or demoralized to pursue him legally." "And my daughter, will he harm her physically?" "There's no history of physical violence, but the emotional damage has been severe in past cases. One victim attempted suicide after he left." That night, I couldn't sleep thinking about my beautiful, kind Sophia and the devastation Derek was planning to inflict on her. The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew that approaching her directly would only push her further into his control. Derek had spent months convincing her that I was becoming cognitively impaired, and any accusations I made would simply reinforce that narrative. I needed to catch him in an act so egregious, so undeniable, that even Sophia in her manipulated state couldn't excuse it away. And based on Jack's investigation, I didn't have much time left before Derek made his final move. The opportunity came sooner than expected, though, in a form I never could have anticipated. In early November, Sophia called to tell me they were planning to visit my sister Julia in Chicago for a long weekend. "You should come with us, Mom," she said, sounding more like her old self than she had in months. "Aunt Julia would love to see you, and it's been ages since we took a trip together." Despite my suspicions about Derek's motives, I agreed immediately. Any chance to spend time with Sophia away from their home environment was valuable, and I hoped that time with my straightforward, no-nonsense sister might help shake some of Derek's influence. The first 2 days in Chicago were surprisingly pleasant. Derek was on his best behavior, charming Julia and her husband with stories and compliments. We visited museums, enjoyed deep dish pizza, and for brief moments, it felt like I had my daughter back. She laughed more freely, made decisions without checking with Derek first, and even mentioned missing some of her old friends. On our third day while shopping on Michigan Avenue, Derek received a call that seemed to agitate him. He stepped away for privacy, but I could see his face darkening as he spoke in heated whispers. When he returned, his demeanor had completely changed. "Bad news," he announced, forcing a regretful expression. "There's an emergency at work I need to handle. We'll have to cut the trip short and head back tomorrow morning." Sophia's face fell. "Can't someone else deal with it? We're supposed to be here until Sunday." "I wish they could, but this involves the state audit," Derek replied smoothly. "If I'm not there, it could jeopardize our entire department's funding." Julia, never one to hold her tongue, frowned. "Surely they have protocols for when administrators are on vacation. Seems strange they can't handle a few days without you." Derek's smile tightened. "I appreciate the vote of confidence, Julia, but healthcare administration isn't quite that simple." Later that evening, as we discussed travel arrangements, Derek had a sudden inspiration. "You know, Helene, there's no reason you have to cut your visit short, too. Why don't you stay with Julia through Sunday as planned? You could take the train back instead of driving with us." "That's a great idea," Sophia chimed in. "Mom, you've been enjoying yourself so much. It seems a shame to end your visit early. Julia nodded enthusiastically. I'd love to have you stay longer, sis. It seemed like a thoughtful suggestion, and I agreed, thinking it might also give me a chance to speak with Sophia away from Derek's influence before they left. But Derek ensured that didn't happen, keeping Sophia busy with packing and last-minute arrangements all evening. The next morning, they prepared to leave for the drive back to Boston. Derek offered to drop me at the train station to purchase my ticket for Sunday's journey before they hit the road. I'll come too, Sophia said, but Derek quickly discouraged her. The station will be crowded, and we're already running late. Why don't you finish saying goodbye to your aunt while I handle this? It'll be quicker. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. Okay, that makes sense. I hugged my daughter tightly, whispering, I love you, in her ear before getting into the passenger seat of their SUV. Derek was unusually quiet during the short drive to Union Station, checking his mirrors frequently, as though making sure we weren't followed. The station was busy with morning commuters when we arrived. Derek parked in a loading zone and helped me retrieve my small suitcase from the trunk. Let's get your ticket sorted, he said, leading me into the massive station. The ticket counters are this way. We walked through the Great Hall, its massive skylight illuminating the space. Derek guided me to a relatively quiet corner near one of the waiting areas away from the main flow of travelers. Wait here with your bag while I buy your ticket, he instructed. It'll be easier if I handle it myself rather than waiting in that line with you. I nodded, watching as he walked toward the ticket counters. But instead of joining the line, he made a sudden turn and disappeared behind a pillar. Confused, I waited, thinking perhaps he'd spotted a shorter line or a self-service kiosk. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I considered calling his cell phone, but realized my phone was in my purse, which Derek had offered to carry because it was too heavy for me. A sense of unease began to grow as I scanned the crowded station. Finally, I spotted him approaching, but something about his expression made my heart sink. His usual mask of concerned son-in-law had vanished, replaced by a cold smugness I'd glimpsed only in unguarded moments. Change of plans, Helene, he said, not bothering to lower his voice. I won't be buying you a ticket after all. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. I don't understand. Derek's smile widened, revealing a cruelty that had always lurked beneath the surface. Let me explain it simply then. I'm leaving you here. No phone, no wallet, no ticket home. What are you talking about? Where's my purse? I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady. He patted his jacket pocket. Safe with me along with your ID and credit cards. I've already called Sophia to tell her you got confused and wandered off while I was buying your ticket. That you seemed disoriented and kept talking about going to see Frank. My dead husband, Sophia, won't believe that. Won't she? I've spent months documenting your supposed cognitive decline. The forgotten appointments, the confusion over dates, the misplaced items, all carefully staged, of course, but very convincing. Especially coming from a healthcare professional concerned about his mother-in-law. The calculated malice of his plan stunned me. Why are you doing this? Because you've been an obstacle from the beginning, Helene. Always watching, always questioning. Sophia was so easy to manipulate until you started planting doubts. He checked his watch impatiently. By the time you find your way back, if you do, I'll have complete control over every aspect of Sophia's life, including her finances. And she'll be so grateful to the husband who's been caring for her mentally declining mother. I felt sick as I realized the full scope of his plan. Sophia will figure out the truth eventually. Derek laughed, the sound echoing in the vast space. By the time she might, I'll be long gone with everything of value, just like I planned from the beginning. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. A confused elderly woman with no ID or money claiming her son-in-law abandoned her with some crazy story about millions in hidden assets. Who do you think they'll believe? Even if you make it back to Boston, you'll be heading straight to a memory care facility courtesy of your concerned family. Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away, my small suitcase still in his hand, alongside my purse. At the edge of the hall, he turned back for one final taunt. "Good luck finding your way home, old woman. Maybe try not to forget where you are this time." His laughter echoed as he disappeared into the crowd, leaving me standing alone in the bustling station without a phone wallet or identification. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm me as the magnitude of my situation sank in. Here I was, hundreds of miles from home, with no immediate way to contact anyone or prove my identity. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I sank onto a nearby bench, trying to steady my breathing. All around me, travelers rushed past, absorbed in their own journeys, oblivious to the life-altering moment I had just experienced. "Ma'am, are you all right?" A soft voice broke through my distress. I looked up to see a young woman in a Chicago Transit Authority uniform, concern etched on her face. "No," I answered truthfully. "I'm not all right at all." As I sat on that hard bench in Union Station, the kind CTA employee, whose name was Tanya, listened to my abbreviated story. I'd been left stranded by a family member who took my belongings and phone. I didn't share the full, complicated truth, but enough for her to understand the seriousness of my situation. "Let me help you call someone," Tanya offered, pulling out her personal cell phone. The problem was, I couldn't remember many phone numbers. Like most people in the digital age, I relied on my contacts list. After a moment of thought, one number came to mind, my friend Martha, whose number I knew by heart because we'd been friends since high school, and she'd never changed it. Martha answered on the third ring, her familiar voice washing over me like a balm. "Martha, it's Helene," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I'm in trouble." "Helene, what's wrong? You sound terrible." As succinctly as possible, I explained my situation. Martha, bless her practical soul, didn't waste time with unnecessary questions. "Give me the address of the station. I'm coming to get you. It'll take me about 3 hours to drive from Indianapolis." Martha had moved to Indianapolis after retirement, a fact I'd momentarily forgotten in my distress. She was still much closer than Boston, and her immediate offer to help brought tears to my eyes. Tanya stayed with me until her shift ended, even buying me a sandwich and coffee from a station vendor. "I can't imagine anyone doing this to their mother-in-law," she said, shaking her head. "Some people have no heart." When Martha finally arrived, her familiar face was like a lighthouse in a storm. She hugged me tightly, then held me at arm's length to examine me. "You look like you've been through hell, but you're still standing. That's my Helene." We drove to her home in Indianapolis, where I finally felt safe enough to break down. Sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, I told her everything, including the truth about my financial situation, something I'd never shared with anyone. Martha's eyes widened as I revealed the extent of my hidden wealth. $37 million, Helene Harrison, you've been holding out on me. Then more seriously, why didn't you tell Sophia? I planned to eventually. I wanted her to build her own life first, not rely on my money. Then Derek came along, and I saw how interested he was in even the modest inheritance she got from Frank. I knew if he discovered the truth, he'd have taken everything," Martha finished for me. "But Helene, what are you going to do? Now Derek has convinced Sophia you're losing your mind. If you go back and start talking about hidden millions, won't that play right into his hands?" Her question crystallized something I'd been pondering during the long drive. "You're right. I can't just go back and make accusations. I need irrefutable evidence and a strategic approach." I straightened in my chair, determination replacing despair. "And for that, I need to make some calls." The next morning, after borrowing clothes from Martha and using her computer, I contacted Thomas Blackwell, a former colleague who had become one of Boston's most respected financial attorneys. Thomas and I had worked together for nearly 20 years before his firm specialized in high-profile financial litigation. "Helene, this is unexpected. Martha's email said it was urgent." "It is, Thomas. I need your help, and it involves a considerable amount of money. Over a secure line, I explained my situation and my true financial status. Thomas, ever the professional, expressed only mild surprise at the revelation of my wealth before focusing on the legal aspects of the situation. What Derek did at the train station constitutes elder abuse and fraud at minimum, he said. But proving it might be challenging, especially if he's been systematically building a case about your supposed cognitive decline. That's why I need more than just my word against his. I need concrete evidence of his pattern of behavior, his financial manipulations, and his true intentions. I agree. Let me make some calls. I know an excellent private investigative firm that specializes in financial fraud. They've worked with us on several cases involving elder exploitation. Within days, a comprehensive plan took shape. Thomas assembled a small team, Jack the private investigator I'd already hired, Sarah, a forensic accountant, and Rachel, a specialist in elder law. Working remotely from Martha's home, I began accessing my hidden accounts, careful to use secure methods that wouldn't alert Derek. The first priority, Thomas advised, is to gather evidence about Derek's previous schemes. We need testimonies from his previous victims' bank records showing his pattern of financial exploitation and any communication that reveals his true intentions. Jack's initial investigation had already uncovered Derek's previous victims, Lisa in Seattle and Amanda in Phoenix. Both women had similar stories: charming courtship isolation from family, gradual control of finances, and then abandonment once he'd extracted what he could. Neither had pursued legal action due to embarrassment and Derek's careful manipulation of the situation. I'll reach out to them, Rachel suggested. As women who've been through this, they might be more willing to help prevent it from happening to someone else. Meanwhile, Sarah delved into Derek's current financial activities. He's moving money from joint accounts with Sophia into private accounts under various business names, she reported. Classic layering technique to hide the source and destination of funds. The most disturbing discovery came 3 weeks into our investigation. Derek had convinced Sophia to grant him medical power of attorney and was in the process of seeking guardianship, claiming concerns about my mental competence based on the wandering incident in Chicago and other documented episodes of confusion. This is actually good news, Thomas said during our daily conference call. It means he's accelerating his timeline, probably because he's worried you might find a way back into Sophia's life. People make mistakes when they rush. I nodded, though my heart ached thinking of my daughter alone with this manipulative predator. What's our next step? We need to set up a confrontation where Derek can't control the narrative, Thomas explained. And we need to ensure Sophia sees irrefutable evidence of his true character before he can spin it. As our plan took shape, I made a crucial decision. I want to use my resources to do more than just expose Derek, I told the team. I want to ensure he can never do this to anyone else. With my team's guidance and my own financial expertise, I began executing a multifaceted plan. First, I accessed one of my larger hidden accounts, transferring $5 million to a secure operating fund for our efforts. The key is to move deliberately but quietly, Thomas advised. We don't want to tip Derek off until everything is in place. Using a series of shell companies and legal trusts, the same structures the wealthy use to protect their assets, I began a systematic campaign to gain leverage over Derek. My first target, his gambling debts. Jack's investigation had revealed that Derek owed nearly $350,000 to various creditors, including some unsavory characters who were pressuring him for payment. Through intermediaries, I purchased these debts, effectively becoming his creditor without his knowledge. Next, I focused on their home. Derek had convinced Sophia to put the mortgage solely in his name, claiming it would protect her credit score, while he sorted out some minor issues with his. Using another shell company, I purchased the mortgage from the lender again, becoming the invisible holder of a key aspect of Derek's financial life. He's accelerating his timeline, Sarah reported during our 4th week of planning. Large withdrawals from Sophia's accounts, liquidation of assets. Classic signs of someone preparing to disappear. This news added urgency to our efforts. Thomas expedited the legal preparations while Rachel coordinated with Derek's previous victims, both of whom agreed to provide sworn testimonies and appear via video call if needed. The picture they painted, combined with the financial evidence, was damning. "We need to move quickly," I told the team, "but I want to be physically present for the confrontation. This needs to be face-to-face." Martha, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal, squeezed my hand. "I'm coming with you. No arguments." 2 days later, we flew to Boston, where Thomas met us at a hotel. "Everything is in place," he confirmed. "We have the financial records, the testimonies, the recordings from the private investigator, and documentation of the assets we now control. The question is, how do we get Sophia alone to present this evidence?" The answer came from Jack, who had been monitoring Derek's movements. "He's planning a weekend trip to Cape Cod, just the two of them, telling people it's to get away from the stress of dealing with Helene's deterioration. They leave tomorrow morning." "That's our window," I decided. "We'll confront them at home tonight before they can leave." The plan was simple, but strategic. Thomas, Martha, and I would arrive at their house in the evening with Jack and a security professional nearby in case Derek became volatile. Sarah and Rachel would join via secure video call to present evidence if needed. As our car pulled up to the beautiful colonial home I'd helped them purchase, though Derek didn't know that I felt a complex mixture of emotions, anxiety, determination, and profound sadness that it had come to this. Thomas gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, stay calm, no matter what he says or does. We have all the evidence we need." The expression on Derek's face when he opened the door was something I'll never forget. Shock quickly masked by calculation, then a forced display of emotional relief. "Helene!" he exclaimed, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "Oh my God, where have you been? We've been worried sick, Sophia. Sophia, come quick, your mother is here." He attempted to embrace me, but I stepped back, maintaining my composure. "Hello, Derek. We need to talk." Sophia appeared in the hallway, her face pale and drawn. When she saw me, her expression transformed from stress to disbelief, then to tearful joy. "Mom!" She pushed past Derek and threw her arms around me. "Where were you? What happened? The police couldn't find any trace of you after you wandered away from the station." Over her shoulder, I could see Derek's face hardening as he registered Thomas's professional appearance and Martha's protective stance behind me. "I didn't wander away, Sophia," I said gently, holding my daughter at arm's length. "Derek abandoned me there deliberately. He took my phone, my wallet, my ID, everything." "What?" Sophia turned to Derek, confusion evident in her expression. "That can't be right. Derek said you got confused that you were talking about Dad as if he were alive." Derek quickly composed himself, his face arranging into concerned lines. "Helene, this delusion is exactly what I've been trying to tell Sophia about. You've been exhibiting signs of cognitive decline for months, wandering off, forgetting conversations, making up elaborate stories." "Perhaps we should all sit down," Thomas suggested smoothly. "I believe we can clear this up quickly with some evidence." "Evidence, who are you?" Derek demanded, his confident facade slipping slightly. "Thomas Blackwell, attorney at law. I represent Mrs. Harrison." Derek's laugh was dismissive but tinged with nervousness. "My mother-in-law doesn't need an attorney. She needs medical attention. In fact, we've been in the process of arranging appropriate care given her deteriorating condition." "Yes, we're aware of your efforts to obtain guardianship," Thomas replied calmly. "That's partly why we're here." We moved to the living room where Sophia sat beside me on the sofa, her expression confused and distressed. Derek remained standing, his posture defensive. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you about Derek," I began gently. "He's not who you think he is." "Don't listen to this, Sophia," Derek interrupted. "Your mother is clearly in the midst of a paranoid episode. This is exactly what Dr. Mendez warned us about. The psychiatrist you claimed diagnosed me, but whom I've never met? I asked. Yes, we should discuss Dr. Mendez, Derek, or rather the fact that no such doctor exists at Boston General. Derek's face flushed. That's not your twisting things. Thomas opened his briefcase and removed a folder. We have evidence that Derek has been systematically manipulating you, Sophia, with the intention of gaining control of your assets before abandoning you. That's ridiculous, Derek sputtered. Sophia, they're trying to drive a wedge between us. This is elder paranoia, exactly what we discussed. Derek, I said calmly, would you like to explain why you've withdrawn nearly $230,000 from Sophia's accounts over the past 3 months? Or why you've established separate accounts under business names that Sophia doesn't know about? Sophia turned to her husband, confusion deepening on her face. What is she talking about, Derek? Financial management, like we discussed. He answered smoothly. Moving assets for better returns, tax planning. And the women in Seattle and Phoenix? I continued. Lisa and Amanda. Should we call them so they can tell Sophia how you used the same techniques on them before disappearing with their money? The blood drained from Derek's face. Who? Thomas nodded to Martha, who set up her tablet for a video call. Lisa's face appeared on the screen, her expression resolute. Hello, Derek. Remember me. The woman you left with $42,000 in debt after emptying our joint accounts. The one you told everyone was emotionally unstable, so no one would believe me when I tried to explain what you'd done. Derek's composure cracked completely. You can't, Sophia. They're setting me up. We have banking records, Derek, Thomas continued implacably. We have testimony from your previous victims. We have recordings of conversations with your gambling creditors. And most damning of all, we have this. He played an audio recording captured by Jack's team Derek on the phone with an unknown person. Just a few more weeks, and I'll have everything liquidated. The mother-in-law situation worked out perfectly. She's gone, no one knows where, and Sophia believes she's losing her mind. Once I get the guardianship paperwork through, I'll have legal access to everything. Then I'm out. Sophia's face crumpled as the reality of the situation hit her. Derek, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't. Derek's expression transformed the mask of concerned husband, falling away completely replaced by cold fury. You think you've won? He snarled at me. You've got nothing but circumstantial evidence and the word of a confused old woman against a respected healthcare administrator. Actually, I replied calmly, we have much more than that. We have ownership of all your gambling debts, which total $347,692. We have the deed to your mortgage, and most importantly, we have this. Thomas produced another recording device and played the final piece of evidence Derek at the train station. His voice clear as he admitted his entire plan, taunting me as he abandoned me without resources. Sophia began to sob, the full weight of the betrayal crushing down on her. How could you? My own mother! You left her alone with nothing! You made me think she was losing her mind. Derek's expression hardened as he realized the game was up. He grabbed his keys from the side table. You can't prove anything that will stand up in court. By the time you figure out what to do next, I'll be gone. I don't think so, Thomas said mildly. There are 2 police officers waiting outside along with a security professional. The evidence we've gathered is more than sufficient for charges of elder abuse fraud and financial exploitation. Additionally, we've frozen all accounts associated with you, including those under your shell companies. Derek's face contorted with rage as he lunged toward me, but the security professional Thomas had mentioned appeared in the doorway, his presence halting Derek mid-movement. You have 2 choices, I told him, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Option 1, you sign the divorce papers we've prepared, which leave Sophia with all marital assets and include a confession to your financial misconduct. You walk away with nothing but your freedom. Option 2, we press charges, provide all evidence to the authorities, and you face prosecution for multiple counts of fraud across 3 states. Derek's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. "And if I sign, you leave Boston tonight and never contact Sophia again," Thomas replied. "Mrs. Harrison is willing to forego prosecution if you agree to these terms and complete financial restoration." After a tense silence, Derek snatched the papers Thomas offered. "Fine, you win. It wasn't worth the trouble anyway." As he signed the documents with angry jabbing motions, I moved to sit beside my daughter, who was still processing the magnitude of what had happened. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I believed him. I actually thought you were... How can you ever forgive me?" I wrapped my arms around her, the mother-daughter connection that Derek had tried so hard to sever flowing strong once more. "There's nothing to forgive. He was a master manipulator who knew exactly how to drive us apart. But he failed in the end because nothing can truly break what we have." Within an hour, Derek was gone from the house and from our lives. The police escorted him to gather some personal belongings, then ensured he left the property. By morning, according to Jack's sources, he had left Boston entirely. As Sophia and I sat in the quiet house afterward, surrounded by the remnants of her shattered marriage, she looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "How did you do all this, Mom? The lawyers, the investigations. It must have cost a fortune." I took a deep breath, knowing it was finally time for the truth. "Sweetheart, there's something I need to tell you about our family finances." The weeks following Derek's departure were difficult, but healing. Sophia's initial reaction to learning about my hidden wealth was a mixture of shock and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked as we sat in her living room the morning after the confrontation. "All these years living like we were just getting by when you had millions. I wanted you to build your own life," I explained gently. "To find your own path without the weight of wealth influencing your choices. I've seen what sudden money does to people, how it can change them and attract the wrong kind of attention." I squeezed her hand. "Though in your case, Derek found you anyway." "But all those times Derek was pressuring you about money, making you sell your house, you could have just told us." "If I had revealed my wealth, Derek would have accelerated his plans to get control of it. Keeping it secret protected those assets so I could use them when the time came to fight back." I paused, choosing my next words carefully. "And honestly, I was waiting for the right time to tell you. Before Derek, I'd planned to help you buy a house, set up a proper foundation for your counseling work." Sophia's anger gradually gave way to understanding as she processed everything that had happened. The painful reality of Derek's manipulation and betrayal was still raw, but each day brought small steps toward recovery. Thomas helped us untangle the financial mess Derek had created, recovering most of the funds he'd diverted from Sophia's accounts. The divorce was finalized quickly, given the overwhelming evidence of Derek's misconduct and his signed confession. As for me, I finally shed the financial disguise I'd worn for decades. I purchased a beautiful Victorian home with plenty of space for both Sophia and me, though each of us had our own private areas. It was close enough to Sophia's work to be convenient, but in a different neighborhood with no memories of Derek. "This house is amazing, Mom," Sophia said as we moved in, her eyes wide as she explored the sprawling garden and light-filled rooms. "But it must have cost a fortune." I smiled. One of many advantages of financial security is creating a space that nurtures healing. This is our fresh start. The hardest part of recovery was helping Sophia rebuild her confidence and trust. Derek had spent years systematically undermining her self-worth, isolating her from friends, and making her doubt her own judgment. The psychological damage couldn't be erased overnight. "I feel so stupid," she confessed one evening as we sat on the porch watching fireflies appear in the summer twilight. "How did I not see what he was doing? All the red flags were there." "Manipulators like Derek are experts at what they do," I reminded her. "They target kind, trusting people precisely because your goodness makes it hard for you to imagine such calculated cruelty. That's not stupidity, Sophia. It's having a generous heart. Gradually, Sophia reconnected with old friends, many of whom Derek had driven away with subtle manipulations. Rachel, her college roommate, became a regular visitor to our new home. I knew something was off about him, Rachel told us during Sunday brunch one weekend. But every time I tried to say something, he'd twist it to make me sound jealous or controlling. Eventually, it seemed easier to just back off. That's exactly how abusers operate, Sophia replied, her professional knowledge now informed by painful personal experience. They isolate their victims by making every outside relationship seem problematic. 6 months after Derek's departure, I made a decision that would change both our lives. Over dinner one evening, I shared my idea with Sophia. I've been thinking about doing something meaningful with my wealth, I began. Something that might help others avoid what happened to you. Sophia looked up from her pasta, interested. What kind of something? A foundation focused on financial education and support for victims of financial abuse. So many people, especially women and seniors, stay in terrible situations because they lack financial resources or knowledge to escape. My daughter's eyes lit up for the first time in months. That's actually brilliant, Mom. With your financial background and my counseling experience, we could create programs that address both the practical and emotional aspects of recovery. The Harrison Foundation for Financial Empowerment launched 3 months later. We started small funding educational workshops and emergency assistance for people leaving financially abusive relationships. Sophia took a leave from her counseling position to help develop the psychological support components of our programs. 1 year after the train station incident, we held our first major fundraising gala. Standing at the podium before a room of donors and supporters, I shared a carefully edited version of our story. Financial abuse often happens in the shadows, I told the attentive crowd. It thrives on shame, isolation, and the victim's reluctance to come forward. Our foundation aims to shine light into those shadows, providing both the practical tools and emotional support needed to break free. Sophia joined me on stage, her confidence visibly restored, as she outlined our programs and future goals. Watching her engage with donors afterward, articulate and passionate about our mission, filled me with immense pride. The wounded, uncertain woman Derek had nearly destroyed was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more resilient. Later that night, as we drove home from the successful event, Sophia turned to me with a thoughtful expression. You know what I realized today? If Derek hadn't done what he did, as terrible as it was, we might never have created the foundation. Hundreds of people might never get the help they need. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Sometimes, the worst betrayals lead us to unexpected blessings. Not because the betrayal was justified, but because of how we choose to respond to it. I'm still angry sometimes, she admitted. Not just at Derek, but at myself for being so blind. But then I see how many people were helping, and it feels like, I don't know, like there's a purpose to what happened. That's how healing works, I replied, thinking of my own journey from that moment of abandonment at the train station to now. We don't forget the pain, but we transform it into something meaningful. As we pulled into our driveway, the Victorian home lit up welcomingly against the night sky. I felt a deep sense of peace. Derek had intended to destroy both of us, me through abandonment and Sophia through exploitation. Instead, he had inadvertently strengthened our bond and created the circumstances for something powerful and positive to emerge. You know what the strangest part is? I mused as we walked toward the house. In all his calculations, Derek never considered that I might have resources he didn't know about. His entire scheme depended on the assumption that I was exactly what I appeared to be, a modestly comfortable widow with limited means. Sophia laughed, the sound light and genuine. The ultimate irony. He was so busy creating illusions that he couldn't see through someone else's. Inside, as we settled in the living room with tea, Sophia asked the question she'd avoided until now. Do you ever wonder what happened to him? Jack keeps tabs on him, I admitted. Last I heard, he was in Nevada trying similar schemes but having much less success. Once your confidence is broken, it's hard to be convincing as a charmer. Do you think he learned anything from what happened? I considered the question carefully. People like Derek rarely change fundamentally, but I do think he learned never to underestimate a seemingly vulnerable older woman. We shared a smile at that, the hard-won wisdom of our experience settling between us like a comfortable blanket. The journey from that cold train station to this warm moment had been difficult and painful, but it had also been transformative. Derek's cruelty had backfired spectacularly, not just failing to destroy us, but catalyzing a powerful new chapter in our lives. Mom, Sophia said softly as she prepared to head upstairs to bed. Thank you. Not just for saving me from Derek, but for showing me what real strength looks like. I don't think I ever truly appreciated who you are until all this happened. I hugged her tightly, this beautiful daughter who had emerged stronger from the fire of betrayal. We saved each other, sweetheart, and in doing so found a way to help others save themselves too. As I watched her climb the stairs, I reflected on the strange winding path that had led us here. Derek had abandoned me at that train station, believing he was eliminating a troublesome obstacle to his plans. He could never have imagined that his cruel action would ultimately lead to his own downfall and our transformation. The millions he never knew about had been instrumental in exposing his scheme, yes. But the true power that defeated him wasn't financial. It was the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter tested by fire and emerged stronger than ever. Have you ever experienced someone underestimating you because of your age or appearance? How did you handle it? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched you or might help someone you know who's facing manipulation or financial abuse, please like, subscribe, and share it with them. Together, we can bring these hidden forms of control out of the shadows. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes our greatest strength lies in what others cannot see.